So, what are Andrej Babiš and Mark Rutte up to again? We have a briefing here, ladies and gentlemen, a briefing after the meeting of these two gentlemen. Before we get into it, of course, I'd like to thank Tomášek Adamek for the 100 crowns who just sent a donation directly via QR code. So if you'd like to support this independent journalistic work, and not just journalistic but also entertainment and educational, you can do so. But now let's get to Andrej Babiš and Mark Rutte and see if the guy got a scolding for what he's doing with our armaments and our army, or what's actually going on. How did he explain it?
So good day to everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, Mr. Secretary General, dear Mark, I am of course very honored by your visit. We are actually meeting for the third time in a relatively short period. I spent 2 hours last time at that residence in Brussels, even before the nomination, and we saw each other briefly in Davos, and now you are here with us. Of course, we are very pleased because as a new government which has been in office for less than 4 months, we naturally consider our defense capability and our commitments within NATO to be very important and a priority.
Oh, that's news to me.
We held talks together in the presence of the Minister of Defense, Mr. Zuna, and in the presence of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And of course, we also talked about defense spending, which is obviously important to us. And certainly one of the priorities is to build a significantly larger army than we currently have.
If only it wanted to, yeah.
They'll exchange those numbers so everything is clear. What are those percentages? Because of course the GDP keeps rising all the time. And when I became the Minister of Finance in the year...
No, not this argument.
I think when I was Prime Minister, we started at 42 billion. And actually we managed to get it somewhere before we left the government. More than 100%, so it was over 90 billion. And since the GDP is actually rising, if I could interpret those numbers, I would say that those numbers, the amount from 2014 to 2025 has increased 4 times. But I understand that those...
We understand that. Andrej, we understand that, but this is not a relevant argument. We have a commitment to spend 3.5% of GDP on defense, at least 2% on defense, with the understanding that the 3.5% and at least 2% must go towards simply buying weapons, ammunition, tanks, radios, underwear for soldiers, and these kinds of things. You can't even spend that on bridges, roads, hospitals, and these kinds of things. Only after we fulfill our part, then we can start spending on some other things. Arguing that our GDP is growing and that even though we're giving a smaller percentage of GDP, we're still giving more money to the military is foolish. It's been completely foolish from the start. Why is it foolish? It's also foolish because our GDP is growing. It means that, for example, even arms manufacturers have to pay higher wages and everything costs more. GDP is also growing simply because expenses are higher, for example, because the amount of money circulating in the economy is greater. And based on this higher GDP, it means that for the same amount of money, you can buy less. It's very, let's say, it's not completely perfect, but it's also partly connected to inflation, for example. Yeah, that's the problem, why we need to use percentages and not just money. And I'm not even talking about the fact that the main thing is that we should be giving percentages and not money. Therefore, the excuse about money when we're supposed to give percentages is wrong. Yeah, it's wrong. That's like if you said, I know I promised you we'd go on a trip, man, to the Canaries. But hey, we're at Maka Lake, but we went on a trip, right? So hey, I actually kept my promise, didn't I? No.
The rules are about those percentages, about GDP. I already explained this once at the NATO summit to President Trump, that each of us has a different GDP and each of us has a different nominal GDP, but we will certainly do everything we can to simply fulfill those commitments. Our army has a great reputation in NATO, that's good. And our soldiers, both in Afghanistan and on all missions, have a great reputation. We are proud of them, and of course, we value them very much.
That's true.
The situation in the world right now is, of course, tense. Tomorrow we have a video conference with our friend Emmanuel Macron and with the British Prime Minister Starmer and other member states.
Viktor Orban is no longer the best friend. Now it's Macron again, right? I knew that Andrei knows where his heart leads him.
Regarding the situation in Hormuz. And I'm glad that colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Minister Makinka and Mr. Zuna, that we are coming up with a proposal and a tangible offer on how to help ensure security in the Strait of Hormuz. I don't want to talk about it in detail. Of course, it's a matter where we are strong, our industry is strong, our technology is strong. And I think our friends and maybe even President Trump will be pleased to get such news that the Czechs are putting this offer on the table.
It will be interesting to see what offer the Czechs will make to ensure the security of the Strait of Hormuz. I can only think of some air defense systems, definitely not ships. It's hard to say, really hard to say what we could offer. Some logistical support, medics, or alternatively, special forces, the 601st, rather than logistics, directly strike forces for some specific operations. But it's hard to say what would be effective. If we had, for example, adopted and learned anti-air combat doctrines from the Ukrainians using drones, that could be quite interesting. Unfortunately, the previous government didn't care about it, and this one isn't doing much about it either. So we can't offer that. We'll see what we can offer. I really can't think of too many things we could offer right now that would be more useful. But yeah, medics, air defense, although actually not really, we don't have much of that ourselves. I'm not sure chemical specialists are needed. Maybe some electronic warfare, we're pretty good at that. Radars, yeah, VRA and so on. That would theoretically be possible.
So of course, we discussed what's happening even in terms of Europe's fuel supply, aviation, gasoline, refineries. It's a huge problem. Europe really should very quickly reassess and look at that balance. And look at self-sufficiency, yeah, because what happened or is happening in Hormuz, of course, nobody expected that. And now everyone is surprised by how many things are made from oil and gas and so on. But that's an issue I'll definitely discuss with my colleagues at the informal summit next week in Cyprus. So once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We've known each other for a long time. So I think our relationship is also very important in this context. You know yourself that I have always fought for the interests of Europe, that the Czech Republic, of course, fights for its own interests, but also for the interests of Europe, and Europe must be competitive. It must also be self-sufficient in terms of defense, and that's what it's all about for us. And thank you very much for the visit, and I'm glad that you're here with us.
Thanks, Mr. Prime Minister. Dobry, you have the floor.
Dobry.
Secretary General of the North Atlantic Alliance, I'm pleased.
I'm pleased with Andrej Babiš's presentation. Vlastně vůči zahraničním partnerům, he didn't seem this convincing at home, but here he took the right approach. The problem is that tomorrow he could start saying something else again or start saying that he meant it completely differently and so on. On the other hand, when it comes to NATO and defense, I think it's more important what he says to Rutte, what he says internationally, than what he says at home, because at home he just says whatever he wants. So commitments are important internationally.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Andrei, dear Andrei.
Our friendship is very important to me.
We've known each other for years as colleagues.
And thank you for that very warm welcome here in Prague.
It's great
that I can see you again and see your team.
It's always nice to be in this beautiful place.
And your city actually stood at the crossroads of history.
For many centuries, and since you joined NATO in 1999, Czechia has been one of the alliance's committed partners,
Contributing to ensuring shared security.
your troops are serving in Slovakia,
In Lithuania,
in Latvia,
and the Czech Republic contributed to the peacekeeping mission in Kosovo, and your fighter jets participate in air policing.
including in Iceland. All of this is a clear example
That Czechia takes its NATO membership very seriously and is determined to contribute to collective defense. In the current security environment, this is becoming increasingly important.
we are facing Russia, China, and the threatening North Korea and dangerous Iran.
Which has a very advanced ballistic and nuclear program.
In this dangerous world, at the NATO summit in The Hague last year, a decision was made to invest more in defense.
To increase defense and to ensure support for Ukraine. The summit in Ankara will focus on further strengthening these efforts
Defense spending is important because,
so that we have the resources and capabilities to keep our people safe.
and of course we know,
And that applies to all alliance partners.
there are challenges.
When it comes to the budget and allocating a larger amount of financial resources for defense.
However, security is the foundation of prosperity. And when security is most important,
Society and the economy suffer.
Andre, you're successful. And of course,
During your long career in business, you know,
how vital a strong industry is. NATO is working on this.
to strengthen transatlantic cooperation and innovation.
Higher defense spending is a crucial deterrent.
They provide economic growth and create job opportunities.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good to point out and elaborate a bit on the idea that security, the feeling that the Czech Republic won't be attacked or threatened in the future, is actually strengthened by having a stronger army and by fulfilling our commitments. If we didn't fulfill our commitments in NATO, the 3.5% and so on, or if we weren't even heading in that direction, some people might feel that the Czech Republic might not be defended or that it might not be such a safe country for investments. And for that reason, this lack of security or not taking care of our own safety and not fulfilling those commitments, if we weren't a good ally, that could actually discourage investors, it could scare away investment, and it could worsen or slow down our economic growth, which I think is also good to mention. Yeah, and of course, the fact that you're doing the development and manufacturing of those weapons, that in itself brings certain benefits to the economy. People have jobs, the labor market is more active, there's more competition, so there's more pressure to increase wages. Yeah, all of this is obviously connected. It would definitely be best if we didn't have to arm ourselves at all, but that's not the world we live in, and it's always better to be prepared than to be surprised. It's always better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. It's always better not to build a bike path than to have that bike path shot up by the enemy.
As for Ukraine,
I welcome the fact that the Czech ammunition initiative is continuing.
because it is a crucial contribution. More than 4 million rounds have already been delivered, and our nations, of course, together with those 30 other allied partners, are working to ensure the supply.
Yesterday I was in Berlin, and I discussed with our partners within the alliance how we will proceed,
So that Ukraine receives assistance,
which it needs. I welcome the support of Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Belgium.
Belgium announced another package of 1.1 billion euros,
Likewise,
like several other countries committed to ongoing assistance.
the latest attack on Ukraine last night shows
How ruthless it is and how it endangers and kills innocent people.
the population. Ukraine needs our help to deter Russia, to repel the attack against Ukraine.
To ensure the security of Europe and to deter Russia from any further aggression.
Prime Minister Babiš, dear Andre,
I look forward to continuing our cooperation on our shared security, and we agree that our people deserve protection. The territory of the alliance must be defended against any threat from any direction.
And of course, we count on a strong Czech Republic and a strong NATO. And thank you for that.
For welcoming me and my delegation this evening. Thank you.
so now there will be questions.
Thank you. Now there's time for one question from Czech television.
Hello, this is your viewer from Czech television. I would like to ask both the Secretary General and the Prime Minister whether the meeting specifically addressed whether the Czech Republic will fulfill its commitment to defense spending by 2035, a total of 5% of GDP, and how important is this milestone for NATO? And also whether the summit in Ankara was a topic, since you mentioned it, it probably was, but specifically about the Czech representatives at this summit, whether it will only be the Prime Minister with ministers or perhaps also the President. Thank you.
Thank you to the reporter for the question. Before I let the gentleman here answer, I would like to make my own statement about it. Namely, that fulfilling those commitments, well, 5% really is quite a lot. So I would say that it's not even necessary to reach that. But such a high ceiling is set precisely to create at least some pressure to increase it as much as possible. If in 2035 we don't spend 5% but maybe 4%, that'll be fine, right? I'd say 5% is really a lot, but only those with small goals are small. So that's that. And then I'd like to add something after he responds about our rearmament, about our spending, because I think I know how Andrej Babiš will react to this. Or at least we know his reactions from the Czech environment. We'll see if he reacts the same way, even with Rutte there.
So allow me
To assure you that we're always talking about defense spending wherever it is. Visiting is not just a matter of today's meeting, because we all have to fulfill our commitments. And I'm looking forward to the summit in Ankara because, of course, it will concern defense spending, will also address the crucial issue of Ukraine, but will also focus on increasing defense production. The point is that we need to have not only the financial resources, but also sufficient industrial capacity.
Because I would just like to say that the symbolism of the ties is clear. Andrej Babiš has a red tie, which signifies, let's say, determination and combativeness, but it's disrupted by white dots or a white pattern, which makes it seem like he wants to appear more friendly, but also show that he is strong. Mark Rutte has a black tie, which means he simply came here to bury us.
The Czech Republic is strong in this. It has a large industrial base, and we would need more production, not only in the Czech Republic,
but in all NATO member states, including the United States, because we need to produce more products,
so that we can maintain our defense.
Minister Zuna has the task of presenting a new strategy for our army by the end of May, which will focus on our commitments, including previous commitments regarding the mechanized brigade and air defense. By the way, tomorrow I will spend about 3 hours in Bechyně with our army, which is testing new technologies, anti-drone technologies, because as we can see, especially in Ukraine, and not only in Ukraine, but also the conflict involving Iran, is about drones. So, Mr. Minister will present this, and certainly the foundation of our army is our soldiers, and we will prepare within the framework of this new strategy so that we can fulfill our commitments to NATO in the long term. Our numbers are different, of course. That's why we agreed that our teams, the team of the Minister of Defense and the team of the Secretary General and his NATO colleagues, will discuss this. We will talk about it. And it's definitely important for us to know each other's expectations as well as our capabilities and goals. So he talks and says nothing. That's definitely a good thing, and we're glad that Mr. Secretary General visited us. Before the summit in Ankara, there will be a meeting at the level of foreign ministers. The Secretary General informed us that US Secretary Rubio will also be there, and of course the Secretary General of NATO himself, so it will actually be a meeting, I think, on the 23rd May, and of course we will be preparing for the summit so that we, as the new coalition government, can provide an update on the situation in our army, our goals, and how we will fulfill those commitments.
So in conclusion, that was really brief, really very quick, one question. It could be said that Andrej Babiš didn't really answer the question, And I would say it's important to mention that although we are giving more money, we should be giving a higher percentage, not just more money, but also a higher percentage. But then again, it's necessary to realize the second point, which is that we have a really badly set up way of purchasing everything. Therefore, we need to improve and speed up the way we purchase equipment, weapons, and gear. Even things like food rations. Even the kitchens, after all. By the way, here at our factory, we make kitchens for the army, so something is probably being prepared. Anyway, the thing is, they often argue that we have nothing to spend the money on. And I say to that, we do have things to spend money on, we just don't have enough money to spend. I like to use an example. It's like if you had 100,000 crowns in your savings account and said, well, I need to buy a house and a car, but I have 100,000 crowns, so I have nothing to spend it on. No, you do have things to spend it on. You want to buy a house for 4 million and a car for 500,000, but you have 100,000 crowns. You can't buy any of those. Saying you have nothing to spend money on is nonsense. You should say, I have little money to spend. That's important. That's the state of our army. It definitely has things to spend money on. It just doesn't have ways to spend it efficiently and quickly. The law needs to be changed, that's clear. And most importantly, it doesn't have enough money to spend it efficiently and quickly, because they would need more money for what they need. That's just it, yeah. The Ministry of Defense was identified here as the culprit, that it's the problem, so let them solve it. Sure, he couldn't answer, he just kind of mumbled and then said it's someone else's problem. For me, it was an interesting press conference. It started well. Mark Rutte, that stable genius. Of course, I meant to say steadily, like fine. Babiš answered pretty well at the beginning, or he spoke very well. His answer to the question from Czech television was pretty much zero. He simply didn't answer. He didn't answer. And that just seems stupid to me. That seems useless to me. But I actually have a pretty good feeling about it, that he expressed himself like this in front of foreign partners, in front of Mark Rutte, saying that he wants to fulfill it, he wants to fix it, that he won't ignore it, and that it's necessary to adjust some steps for that. Of course, he'll get away with it if he says it once or twice. But if nothing happens afterwards, then there will be some serious international blowback that we might regret. And based on that, there will definitely be some domestic reaction, which won't be very good for the poll numbers of the ANO movement. So, we'll see how it all turns out. Write to me in the comments how you see the Czech Republic's rearmament, because it seems to me that there are a lot of people here who don't understand that it's better to be a soldier in a garden than a gardener in a war. They don't understand this absolutely simple concept. Well, yeah, we'll see each other again next time. Come to the streams, watch more videos, and definitely join tonight's stream/podcast Váleční štváči. Have a nice day and bye for now. Support the content, likes, shares, you know how it goes, and QR codes.